Hello and welcome to Linux Astro. This is a short video showing the basic setup for PHD2 in Linux using INDI drivers. We're using an iOptron GEM28EC mount, and on it we have a 120mm monochrome mini guide scope. We also have a focuser and a QHY camera on the Raptor that's on that scope, but for the purposes of this demonstration, we don't need to talk about them right now. In fact, I'm not even going to load those drivers for the PHD setup, since PHD doesn't really care what the imaging scope is unless it's using an off-axis guider, and we're not doing that. We're going to start here by connecting to the little Raspberry Pi that's on the scope doing all the hard and heavy lifting. And the PHD2 program is actually installed on that Raspberry Pi. So we'll just VNC into that using Ramina. And here we are on the Pi. Okay, we're going to open a terminal window. We'll start the INDI server. And the only thing that we're really concerned about here is the mount, because the guide camera is a ZWO ASI camera. And even though there is an INDI driver for it, there's a built-in driver in PHD for ZWO scopes, so we'll use that. Therefore, INDI server, and the mount is INDI iOptron v3 telescope. And that's really the only driver we need to set up PHD, because it's the only one it's going to use. Now, if we were setting up the server to do everything else, I would put the focuser on there and the imaging camera when I started the INDI driver. But for the setup, that's not necessary. And if you were just going to run PHD for some reason, then that's all you need. Okay, there it is. And we'll open PHD. And PHD, I've deleted the old configurations. So what it'll do here is go right into the configuration wizard. And it's asking the guide camera. We're going to say we have a ZWO ASI, and therefore it'll use the internal camera. Yes, it's connected. And notice that it right away already figured out the pixel size from the camera because it used its driver to connect to the camera. And the guide scope telescope here is a 130. And so we have our pixel scale already calculated. Now we hit next. And the mount, we're going to say INDI mount because that's all we've got right now. And the mount does not have high precision encoders, so we'll just go forward. This mount guide speed, 0.5 is typical for most mounts. All right, we don't have an auxiliary mount. Proceed. We don't have adaptive optics here either, so we'll just bypass that. I'm going to call the profile Raptor iOptron because it's the Raptor scope on the iOptron mount. And it's going to ask if it can build a dark library, and for that you have to have the lens cap on, which I have. And it's going to go through now. Now it wants to know if it can connect to the mount, and notice it hasn't identified the mount yet, but if you click on this, presto, there's iOptron v3. It sees the driver, and life is good. So we'll go ahead and say OK there. Now it's ready to take the dark library. I like to set mine down at the very beginning because sometimes I play around looking with the camera and the guide scope for different things. And if it'll apply the dark library to every setting that you let it do. Most people say, well, you'll never use that for guiding. And they're right. My guiding is usually, for this particular setup, I set the image speed at about 2.5 seconds based on the information I got from the guiding assistant. So anyway, here we go. This is going to take a little while, so scope's already covered. And I'll be back with you when this is over. Okay, and here's the last dark frame being taken. And the dark frames are done, and the dark library is now built. So you're ready to go. Configuration's complete. And that's all there is to it. Now, if you wanted to use this, you would just click here and connect everything up. We hit connect, and we're connected to the camera. and we'll hit connect and we'll connect to the mount. Sometimes this takes a little while. One time the mount will connect instantly, the next time it'll take maybe 30 seconds. And this is apparently one of the 30-second rounds. Okay, now they're both connected. We're ready to go. We can close this little window. And when it's time to start guiding, you'll press this to take an image. You'll press this for it to start selecting stars. And then you'll do the famous PHD, press here dummy, to start the guiding. When you initially start with PHD, it's going to do a calibration. It does that once every session when you first start it up. And after the calibration, which takes about a minute or two, then the next time you press that button, well, it'll start guiding, but the next time you press that button after you've moved the telescope somewhere, it will immediately start guiding instead of going into another calibration. And then, of course, if you want to stop, you just hit stop. At the end of this, when you're finished with everything and you've done all the imaging you want to do or whatever you're doing, sightseeing, go ahead and press this connect button, disconnect all, which is almost instantaneous, close, and then don't press this X. There are several layouts depending on your screen that PHD will go to. This X will just close this particular window and you'll have to put it back. You can close this one to close it, but I always go File, Exit, and that way I know I'm in good shape. Here we are back at INDI server, and we can just close this window and that'll kill that process. And presto, empty screen. And this is the Raptor again. So we'll get out of the Raptor back on the main machine, and presto, we're done. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe.